right, guys, welcome to another episode of the I Am Podcast. My name is Aaron Morales. Today's episode is sponsored by Powerhouse Fitness and Fresh and Fuego. Powerhouse Fitness, the gym located in the City of Industry, personal training, fit camp classes. Make sure to check them out. Fresh and Fuego's meal prep company for all your meal prep needs. Today, we're going to talk about a big controversial topic. I know I bring it up a lot. I've talked to my team members, employees, to friends, family. It was a big conversation that I had with my mom growing up. And is it, should you drop out of school? And I want to clearly, define the factors of whether or not I personally feel you should drop out of school or whether you shouldn't drop out of school. Because right now it seems as the entrepreneurial craze is coming about, that it seems to be like the thing to do. But then again, it's not a perfect fit for everybody. Doctors, lawyers, things of that sort. I personally wouldn't want to go to a doctor that's dropped out of school and is, trying to go practice his practice based off of, Google research or, hey, yeah, I'm going to do some surgery based off some YouTube video that I found. All right. So granted, there are certain professions that you just simply cannot drop out of school. Education is crucial. But when it comes to opening up your business, say that you wanted to own a doctor's practice, but you had doctors working for you, then you may not need to have that type of schooling, or granted, a formal education, but you need some type of education. Education across the board is super important. And I want to kind of clearly differentiate the two of, formal education when it's appropriate, and then kind of just like your self-attained business knowledge and kind of when that's appropriate. First and foremost, if you're going to drop out of school, you definitely need to have a plan. I personally myself dropped out of school, and it's not something that, I rave about anymore. Prior, when I was younger, a little bit more immature, it was something I was like, yeah, I dropped out of school, fuck school, I don't need this. But I've always continued my education, whether it's self-research, hiring on mentors or coaches. It was never that. When I was younger, I thought dropping out of school was like this stigma that I was like, yeah, fuck school, I don't need school. But subconsciously, I was still continuing my education, but just in a different version. And up until recent years, it became more apparent that education needs to be a top priority, no matter if you're a business person or, working a 9-to-5 or whatever the case may be. Education and self-improvement is very important. So the question of what's your reason behind dropping out of school? Dropping out of school personally, back in 2000, I think it was like 13 or 14. It was like my senior year of college. Granted, I was almost done. I'm like 9 or 12 units shy of my bachelor's in kinesiology, but that was during the time when I first founded Powerhouse over in the city of Covina. I had just left LA Fitness, and, things were just kind of blowing up out of proportion, where it was, requiring more of my time. And granted, I accomplished a lot over at Cal State Fullerton. The majority of my courses are done. Granted, I just need like an internship and like an anatomy lab and a couple other classes that I need to go back and finish. But to me, it just felt appropriate that I could not sacrifice the time I would be in school over the growth of my business. So I had a specific reason. It was not just like, oh, fuck, all my friends are dropping out of school. Now I feel that I need to drop out of school. I contemplated with myself continuously back then about like, okay, what are my parents gonna think? That was like the first thing. That was more of my mom. She helped, pay for my education. Granted, I helped pay for my education as well. So it's like, okay, I invested all this money. Now I'm about to throw it all away. But that, going back to a previous video that I've had when I talk about, the key components of entrepreneurship and risk, right? The reward outweighed the risk of me dropping out of school. So the reward of Powerhouse and it thriving, doing well, was well more worth it than me continuing to go to school and acquiring a bachelor's degree at that specific point in my time. Granted, I still think that the bachelor's degree is important, and I'm going to touch about future plans that I might have when it comes to that. But my reason for dropping out, I had a specific reason, and I followed through. A lot of times I feel people are dropping out of school now because they feel like, oh, school's not important. But then they are not the most educated people, and they don't have any plans of continuing their education or following through, whether they continuously read, whether they do, self-improvement. They have no real plan. So I feel that those that do drop out of school, but it's for a specific reason because they're following through with the business or they're going to take a different route, is completely appropriate, right? I feel the school setting is more practical after you have real life experience. So what I mean by that is, for example, I have a couple of my team members here that stopped going to school, but they are still continuing their education, whether it's through me, whether it's through exercises that I have them do, whether it's their self-improvement or courses that they're taking that are more tailored towards their niche as opposed to a formal education. But granted, I still recommend that they go back to school after they gain a little bit more experience because in the fitness industry, for example, and you need some type of exercise science or kinesiology degree, after you've been in the gym setting, in the personal training setting or the boot camp class setting, you acquire some type of knowledge or how the flow of a business works or how a flow of that trade works. And then when you go back to school, that it's a little bit more relatable. I feel a lot of the times, when people have this textbook knowledge and they have no real way to apply it, or they have no, firsthand experience as to what these certain things mean. Granted, one of the courses that I took over at Cal State Fullerton was along the lines of personal training and how to deal with clients. It's like, yeah, the textbook makes it seem pretty easy in that it's not going to be, such a hard process to figure out. And, people with certain ailments, you're going to have to, talk to them a certain way, or, handle situations or training a certain way, certain movements or whatever the case may be. But, when you throw those people that I have talked to into that setting that have, after they have this formal education and have no, real life experience, more often than not, they struggle because they can't correlate the two together. But I feel that the people that have, jumped into the personal training and, continued their education in a non-formal setting and then go back to school, they tend to have a little bit more of a grasp on what exactly it is that they're learning. And I can be a firsthand example to that because granted, I went through the majority of the courses over at Cal State Fullerton, but I do have a lot of life experience and business experience in my field of work. So I know when I go back to school, because it's something that I plan on doing, I know I've been mentioning it for a long time now, but I feel that when I go back that I'm going to have, 110% more of an understanding than I would, if I would just continue my schooling and then, jumped into the field. So there has to be that reason that you drop out of school. And that's the one that I usually give to my team members over here if it's something that they're considering, right? Education is important, but, also when you're in this field and when you're in business, that you cannot miss an opportunity wave. Opportunities are not always going to be present. Certain opportunities are always going to arise, but that one key moment that you don't jump on could be a make it or break it for you. And that's something that I felt very passionate about when it came to Powerhouse. The fitness industry has been booming for some time now, and it would really took off kind of like when Instagram took off back in like 2011, 12, 13. And that was the time that I decided to take that risk and jump into the fitness industry. And I feel that I was fortunate enough to jump in at that time, take that risk and establish myself. So, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we're able to have that platform and be where we're at, as opposed to those people that I know that were in my class that graduated and are just now kind of reaching their second or third year of business, and they're still struggling because the industry is just so saturated now. So I got in a time when it was a little bit less saturated. Fitness was on its upswing. Granted, I was, it's a risk that I took. I was young, not as seasoned as a lot of the other people, but it was just a risk that I happened to take. And I felt that, like, again, the reward outweighed the risk. Also, kind of going back, should you drop out of school? If that question is arising for you, I would go back and think about, well, what are you exactly going to school for? What is your degree in? Is it something that you're passionate about? Are you just going through school because, your parents are telling you to go to school? There has to be an underlying reason for you. If you're going to school to please somebody else, which, is a question that arises more often than not, then I would definitely, take a step back and ask yourself, if is that field even something that you want to do? Because maybe you wouldn't have to drop out of school if you just made a lateral shift into a different degree that, something that you're more passionate about. Because I've heard, oh, I'm going to school to be a doctor because my parents want me to be a doctor, but, I really want to be a English teacher, so, make sure that you're going to school, if you're going to decide to, continue with a formal education, that you're going to school with something that you're passionate about, right? Uh, kind of going back to, I'm going to flip flop back and forth to my personal experiences and my suggestions. Granted, because everybody has their own opinion. So by getting a formal education and having a business, because this is something that I've contemplated going back and forth throughout the years. It's not that I think formal education is wrong in this specific situation. Is that I had already established a business, and by me acquiring a degree, yeah, it'll give me more of a what's the word I'm looking for? More of a sense of respect, so to say, but it's not like I could go ahead and charge more. You know what I mean? Just because I have a degree doesn't mean like, okay, from one day to the next, I graduate, all the clients that I had on a certain, pay scale or certain pay rate, it's like, okay, well, I have this degree now. I know everything that I already knew, but now I'm going to charge you, 10% more. So that's usually, that was a big factor for me. Is it's like, I cannot just go from, one page to the next and have my clients have this same person that they were always getting, but now I have a degree, all of a sudden I'm going to charge more. So for me, that was one of the also key components that why I was not in a rush to go back to receive that formal education, because it wasn't going to really change anything for me. And to be honest, to pay over at Cal State Fullerton at the time was like $6,000 or $7,000 a semester, I believe, or it might have been a year. I can't remember. But it was just kind of a little outrageous and money that I just didn't have to spend when I was first starting out in a business. And again, what I felt that I was going to receive wasn't worth the risk that I was taking. And then let's see, going back, a couple notes written down here that I wanted to touch on. Let's see, go back in here. Oh yeah. So fast forward to where I'm at now. I do plan on going back to school, but the purpose of going back to school now is for more of a specific approach that I want to take for the next step of my business. So I recently had a conversation with my CPA, and it involved a possible business opportunity for someone that has a doctor of physical therapy. Granted, a couple units shy from my bachelor's in kines, and then grad school, I've already taken some prereqs for that, which would be like a 1.5 to 2-year program. Or if I decided to do a PT aid, then that's something that would also fall along the lines with my next business move. But the only reason now I would consider going back is because in order for me to take this next step of my business in a route that I'm considering taking, is that I need some type of degree to be held to a higher standard, bill insurance, things along that line that I can only do if I have that specific degree. So again, guys, my philosophy has changed from, kind of this fuck school approach to more of, okay, if I go back to school and I do decide to continue my degree, what is my move from that point further? Again, going back to a podcast that I have about the successful traits of an entrepreneur is the risk taker, right? So I'm taking this calculated risk. I'm planning out this move in my head. Okay, the money I'm going to spend, the time it's going to take, it's going to remove me from my business for a little bit of time. But taking that one step back, is it going to shoot me 3 steps forward? And it's something that I'm currently working out right now. So if I do decide to make that move, it's going to be a calculated risk, and it'll be going back to school for a business-driven purpose, because I already continue my education, reading articles, reaching out to mentors, coaches that know more than me. I am a student in my industry already, but for the next move, rather, I'm going to need some type of formal education. So going back to this topic of the podcast, should you drop out of school? make sure that you kind of go through each of the points that we hit today to make sure that is a correct move for you, because you don't want to make a move that you are going to regret later. And to be quite honest, schooling is important, especially, obviously throughout the years. And kind of the point that I want to make, I have this thought coming to my head right now, because even though that your degree may not pertain to the business that you want to do, the exercises that they have you do in school and in grade school and in high school, you should pay a little bit more attention to, especially when it comes to writing skills, public speaking, and things of that sort. Are no matter what industry you're going to go into, those are going to be daily practices that you have to utilize, whether it's talking to people, speaking in front of camera, something that I'm trying to get more comfortable doing. Just kind of putting yourself out there. And by you dropping out of school and not having a plan is going to hinder you from excelling in those specific parts of your business. Because also, I feel like being a successful entrepreneur is being able to speak well in front of other people and being able to continue a conversation. And those are qualities that you can acquire while you're in school from all the exercises that you do. So I just want to leave this podcast with the should you drop out of school, make sure you, before you make that decision, kind of go through this little checklist that we made today, and make sure that is the correct move for you. And if you do decide whatever route that you take, that you have the next 2 or 3 steps ahead of you planned out. Again, thanks for tuning in for the I Am Podcast. Go check us out on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.